Okay, so what are some of the most unique items found on a shipwreck in the Great Lakes? Either maybe you saw or you've heard. What are some like really unique things that were found?
I started diving in '91, so many of the wrecks had been stripped down. All the shallow stuff had already been stripped down, but when I dove to Cedarville and I interviewed many of the crew, I was the first to do television interviews with Len Gabriziak, who was at the wheel, and he talked about Charlie Cook looking into the radar. It was pea soup fog as they approached another vessel at the Mackinac Bridge, and the radar was their only way to go through. Imagine going into the pilot house and the wheel is gone. It was taken off, I think, by Dick Grace. Everything's been stripped on the shipwreck, and people have been killed trying to take things from these wrecks. But the radar is still hanging upside down there, and it still said cursor and all the knobs were there. It's sobering to see these things, and to have them in place is even more. I love seeing museum pieces, and I know the impact of those. I'm on the board at Whitefish Point. I've been on the board of the Association for Great Lakes Maritime History, where they all have museums, and I know the impact of those things. But there's a fine line between bringing them up from the bottom and and making a facsimile of something that would probably have the same impact. The burned bell of the Griffith, which was a passenger ship where over 100 people died in a fire, and the bell is still crispy, that has impact. It's horrible. The life raft or the lifeboats from the Fitzgerald that are on two different museums, all of those have impact. And that bell, people openly weep at the bell of the Fitzgerald. I know the impact of those things, but to have people wholesale go, we need to take everything up because it's eventually going to be ruined. Well, yeah, that could take 200 years on some of this stuff, and technology is going to get better. Maybe we leave it down there for other people to maybe get better sonar that can look under mud and stuff. We don't know where technology is going, and maybe that'll be open. But if you move it or take it, that changes the whole profile, and we know it's wrecked at that point. Whether you damage it because it's so fragile, or you bring it up and put it in your garage and nobody loves it anymore, what's worse? I think leave it at the bottom, and that's, unless it's culturally significant.
Take the photos, take the video.
Yeah, Titanic's a different story, though. It's rusting, it's going to fall apart. It doesn't have the protection the way the Great Lakes do. So there's an argument on both parts, and I'll listen to both of them. I'm reasonable.
Somebody asked tonight, say in 50 years, will the Fitzgerald still look as or another, so that's the fresh water. It isn't,
you bet.
And people are asking about the mussels and the stuff with Lake Superior, thankfully, doesn't.
Yeah, but it is water, and it is metal, and it'll rust, and it'll fall apart, and the weight, the ship was never designed, especially the stern, to have that giant prop above it. Yeah. It's all going to collapse in, and we're seeing that happen on many of our ships. But the worst damage has been people putting their anchors through shipwrecks, trying to go visit them, or they rip it, they snag it and pull it off, and and most of it is not malicious. It's just an accident, but some of it is malicious where they think, I need to show my buddy this. But GoPros have changed that. People now can go and do videos and call that good rather than bringing a chunk of it home. And that's changed a lot since even when I started diving in '91.
All right, so one more question and then I'll close with some small talk because we're also losing daylight.
Yeah.
But if there was any alcohol, say during the Prohibition time, found on one of these shipwrecks in the Great Lakes, would that still be drinkable?
Yeah, we know so much about the gangs that ran from Detroit across the river, and they find all kinds of stuff. Cars, that were driven across the ice. They're finding bottles. The Westmoreland was found, and it's so deep that they haven't gone all the way in to find out if there's kegs of alcohol. They thought that there was supposed to be whiskey. There's barrels on several shipwrecks that some people believe has alcohol in there. And, when they brought the Regina bottles up, they had a salvage permit when they found it in the 80s from the 1913 storm, and some people bought it and even had a toast at their wedding. It was in People magazine of them toasting. Where everybody died on a shipwreck, I can't drink alcohol from that. I'm sorry. No. But there is a curiosity, and there's a push on the Westmoreland to maybe get a keg, and make a whiskey out of it. That's I don't know. I'm on the fence on that. Is it a gimmick? Is it making fun of everybody who died on that shipwreck, or maybe not paying good homage to them? Is the swim for the Fitzgerald people right now in good taste? There's so many things. Putting the beer can on the Edmund Fitzgerald with the newt suit. The Canadian Navy let this happen, and I'm like, that's littering. you know what? There's a lot of tributes that we do in the word of let's pay tribute to somebody, and some of it doesn't make sense to me. So bringing pieces up, especially the whiskey and stuff, trying to auction it off, they never made their money back on the Regina salvage. The safe never has the money that they're always looking for. You know, they always think there's coins in it. I think only the Lady Elgin had a couple of gold coins in it, and that's it. So
was it muskets too, or
muskets are worth something, but you know, who's going to preserve them? You know, and the ones that they do have, I don't even know the history on it. All I hear is this gray tale about how some diver had some money owed to him by Harry, and then they had the guns, but there's no names mentioned or anything. That, you know, it's got me scratching my head, but that's not to say it's not legit. It just means that not enough information's been given out, and somebody should look into it, you know? And perhaps the people who are making the most headlines on it might be the ones that you look at, you know, because maybe no money transpires, but if there's names in the news and stuff, and we see, especially with the Griffin, where they don't go to archaeologists first, they go to the media. Everybody wants their name in the newspaper. Go do something significant about the story, you know? Finding something is important, but come on, let's tell a story about it. That's more important, and that's what I'd rather see.
Yeah. Well, I think I got like 2 personal questions. I've answered all the questions. This is just some enjoyable small talk. I just recently learned about, is it the Pewabic? How you say that?
Pewabic, yeah.
Pewabic. I try my hardest to get these pronunciations.
Native American words and and people's names, you know, named for rich people that have long passed. It's impossible, so don't worry about it. Okay. Someone will correct you, sadly, but I've been the same place.
The Pewabic, I just learned about this, so that was
a ship carrying copper that for some reason, ran into the meteor off of Thunder Bay, and the thought is that they were transferring the mail and they were trying to be macho about it, and they did it at full speed or close to, and they collided, and it cost 100 lives. You know, the meteor made it, and they managed to collect some people, but many lives went down with it, and then many divers were killed trying to get the copper off of it. Giant ingots from 3 or 4 different mines up in the Keweenaw. It had a value, you know. These are pure ingots, so most of that's gone now. It's in museums and it's in different places, but Pewabic's story is amazing, and bones still on the shipwreck, you know. But they clamshelled off the shipwreck, taking bodies with them and everything, trying to get that copper, and it just breaks your heart. I mean, I get it, there's money to be made and legally, but that's sad when it's a grave site.
I remember I don't remember if it was the Whitefish Point Museum or whatever, they were diving. It was like an 80s documentary. It was the Superior City, and you see them, there's the skull, or there's
or bringing up the ring from the finger that was on there.
Still sitting there like that.
You know, I scratch my head because Whitefish was very, you know, against us filming a body on the Fitzgerald, and yet they had that documentary. So there's always these questions of who's right and who's wrong, and I'm not always a guy that's right. So I got to find a middle, collecting artifacts, not collecting artifacts, filming human remains. Is it significant? It is if you write a song that the lake never gives up its dead, and that from 1975 on, nobody found a body, and we did. That's significant. So,
same for the Emperor. I don't know if it was the same documentary, but they showed there's the skeleton guy in his engineer outfits just sitting in.
And what did the music do? It went real scary, And is that how you should do it? You know, it's a gravesite, for crying out loud. Yeah. You know, and the reality is that yes, people pass away from these things, but it shouldn't be. You know, we're Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom here. Yeah. You know, these are grave sites, but the stories need to be told. And if you're a good ethical producer, and I'm not saying I am, I'm saying I try to be, you find a way to make that happen correctly. Yeah. But you can't always hit 100%, because most people would say, don't show it then. Well, significantly,
it's a fine line.
Yeah, it is. The Bradley, when we dove it, they said you're going to show bodies. We're like, no, nobody ever said.
Are there bodies on the Bradley?
Oh yeah, there's still a couple they didn't find. Sadly, most of the bodies had slipped out of their life vests because they were poorly designed. But they changed it after the wreck in '58. So we saw some improvement. Same with the Fitzgerald. But there's still bodies out there, and family members were upset we'd see them. I'm like, I have no interest in that. But I'm not the one that said the Chippewa have a legend legend that the lake never gives up the dead. You know, that was the song, that was the mystery. That's why National Enquirer did a whole story about aliens taking the Fitzgerald crew. You know, we broke that mystery in 1994, and sadly we had to prove it because no one would have said, they would have said, oh, you're lying if we didn't show something. So I did the bare minimum with footage, you know, that I knew wasn't a close-up.
Yeah.
I knew they couldn't identify, and to this day, nobody knows. So we've never given it up, and I can sleep well with
Rick,
that.
every time we meet, you've got so much years of history and knowledge and meeting people, and you've got a passion. Guys, please do, as much as I love producing these videos and showing all these unheard of shipwrecks, and the stories are great and everything, like, there's things that when I do meet with Rick now and talk, like, to keep the maritime history alive, like nobody goes to the museums, or nobody, you know, I felt such pride in my state knowing Michigan, the Great Lakes state. What is Michigan? Yes, cherries. Yes, wine. Yes, football and bonfire. We are the Great Lakes state. So I want these years and years of history of maritime history not to be forgotten. Please support Rick in what he does. He's been there, done that, and you know, the channel could close tomorrow, and that's fine. I just want these stories and the people and the survivors and the testimonies of these things that did happen. They're not inflated. They can be online, but that this gets preserved.
Yeah.
I want this channel to, as much as inspire the older generations, I want the younger generations to get that, you know, get that knowledge. And you had told me, I kind of asked that before, like, why isn't this being taught? Why isn't this being, you know, passed?
We can't, you know, I mean, you have a new venue on the internet, which is amazing, that can be cross-searched in a way that we've never been able to do before. So we are in a good position. We just can't expect it to be at college or at high school or at middle school or elementary school, just because of the curriculums right now. I think it's interesting enough, and don't worry about my stuff, because I did my chapter. You know, it's now up to, I stood on the shoulders of incredible authors like Stonehouse and Boyer and Bowen and all these people that before me did incredible research. I was just smart enough to use my TV camera to take it to another level and capture what I could. There's still a lot to be done by other people, and hopefully, and I look behind me and I see Jake and I see so many people that are doing it. So I'm confident in everything that I own will go to a museum. There's several museums that want it. I've got a basement that my wife would love to clear out, and as I finish books on Fitzgerald and Howling Winds and Bottle Goodbyes, all of these things I can put into a box now and just say I'm done with it. I can now move it off. I'd be sad to have my projects knocked off by my own stuff, you know, because it's there. But the truth is, there's other takes on that, and I don't own these survivor stories. I do that I filmed it, but the story is for everybody. That's why PBS doesn't get charged a dime for me to share any of my stories. Are, you know, Big Bird costs them a lot of money, but not history documentaries. So I've done my part. Now we're watching you, and we're watching other people too, and they're still finding shipwrecks, you know. And so I'll always find something new, you know, to tell a story about until I'm finally done. And that'll be, you know, when I can't walk anymore, you know. Not even a brain tumor can slow me down. So I'm going to keep going until I can't.
No, I speak for our state. Like, we're going to keep Rick. We're going to do everything. We're going to keep him half cyborg if we can keep him around for a lot longer. But I think you will be one of the great minds and passions for this state and for this topic. That's not going to be a good day. I ain't going to think about that.
Well, that's like kind of you, but I'll tell you that's not why I do it. I could care less that if you Google great historian and my name comes up, or, you know, one of the TV stations says if there's a Mount Rushmore of historians, Rick's on it, and I'm like, what? No way. Now with the list I've seen, you know, and the people I've met like Pat Labadie and stuff, but that's very nice, but not why I do it. I do it because I'm borderline, you know, there's a fine line between passion and obsession, and I'm right on that line of, you know, just love it so much that I'm actually building a griffin monument down into my basement of what looks like, I just love doing it, and it's fun to live it, and it's fun to do the research, but to do it just because people can say my name, that's silly. I could care less. That's a wonderful byproduct that people will buy my book, but absolutely could care less if someone knows my name.
You got the same passion as me. I love going to the beaches. I love seeing, everybody having a great time. But then knowing you and knowing our passion, I can't look at the Great Lakes the same anymore, knowing what we know. So
Yeah.
with that though, guys, this has been an amazing second meetup. Hopefully I can snag Rick again in the future.
Count on it, man. Count on it.
I love him, and I appreciate every time you come on and agree to this. You don't have to do it, and yet you do, so I thank you for that, Rick.
I'm thrilled that you're doing it, and I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for this episode. There will not be a video mess up this time. So.
Oh, stop it.
Real quick, Rick, where can people find you? Where can people find you, and what are you working on?
LakeFury.com and ShipwreckPodcast.com has more stories than you'll ever want. Your local library, your favorite marine museum. Go into any maritime museum, and if you don't see me on the shelf, ask them and say, why is this not here? Because I think it deserves a place there. So those are the best places to go to find my things, because it supports the museum, it supports the library, and that's what I'd like to see.
Okay. Well, with that being said, guys, thank you again for this episode, and do look forward to the next ship story coming, and look forward to Rick's stuff as well. So thank you, everyone, so very much.